Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Australia is not a participant in this conflict.
The Labor government has taken the Muslim population for granted.
It just makes my blood boil.
Labor MPs are living in fear.
Oh Muslim, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him.
If that's not hate speech, I don't know what is.
Get the out of here.
Religion and politics should never mix.
It's Friday night in the heart of Sydney's Muslim community, and I'm investigating a story that really began in Gaza, and for many on October 7 last year. But its effects here have been profound. A political movement has risen up that threatens Labor's very hold on power. At the same time, young minds across the board are being radicalised. These tensions are driving a much broader political struggle. Join me as I investigate just what's at stake.
We've seen a government fail to do the minimum things that it actually can do to stop what's going on. What we're aiming for is to increase the awareness and education of our community around the way the political system operates. And that's what our movement's about, mobilising our community on election day.
This is Lakemba in Western Sydney, part of the beating heart of Australia's Muslim community. And as we move closer to a federal election, this is a community that demands to be seen and heard. Should the government be concerned?
Well, I would believe that all parties should be concerned, because those parties, those major parties, if you want to include the Greens, have a duty to be representative of all the Australian community. I mean, you can frame it around the Palestinian issue. Let's call it, that's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Since Hamas's surprise attack on Israel, when 1,200 innocent people were slaughtered, scores of women raped and hundreds taken hostage, Israel has launched a sustained and brutal campaign to eliminate the ongoing Hamas threat. But this has led to an enormous death toll, with tens of thousands of Palestinians losing their lives, including thousands of women and children, leaving millions more effectively homeless.
It goes to the very heart of what this nation is. Do we want to be a nation that stands idly back and allows that atrocity to happen and say, well, it's got nothing to do with us? That's not the nation we want. And we don't believe that's the nation most Australians want. And so when your voice isn't heard, then you've got to take action. And that's what this is.
This is Muslim Votes Matter, a newly formed political movement. Spokesman Gaith Graham explains that Labor's response over the war in Gaza has served as a catalyst for Australia's growing Muslim community. I can see in your eyes you're angry.
I'm frustrated. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm frustrated. I fundamentally believe that on this issue of Palestine, majority of Australians support the government doing more than what it is currently doing.
Look, I wouldn't be doing my job unless we talked about integrity also. Are you comfortable having a brief chat about your past?
Jonathan, my past is irrelevant. The question about anything that I may have done, and I did, I made mistakes 20 years ago, but how is that in any way relevant to what's going now?
In 2004, Gaith Graham was convicted of fraud for misleading clients and committing serious deception. He was subsequently struck off as a solicitor by the New South Wales Law Society.
All that does is try to distract from the reality of what's going on the ground in Gaza and Palestine. It's been used against me before, right? This is nothing new.
For Muslim Votes Matter, it comes down to pressuring Israel diplomatically in the hope of forcing a ceasefire.
It can recall the Australian ambassador. It can expel the Israeli ambassador. It can start to introduce sanctions on Israeli goods. It can come out very clearly and say it will support any warrants that come out of the International Criminal Court.
You paint a picture there of a government which has got blood on its hands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you have the ability to do something and you fail not to do it, then you're complicit in what goes on.
Australia is not a participant in this conflict. And the idea that Australia is in a position to stop this conflict is, quite frankly, just not the case. That is the reality. Australia is not a participant.
About 1 million Muslims live in Australia, Islam is the second largest and the fastest growing religion in the country. But it's here on the ground where the stats get interesting, because most Muslims live in areas that are Labor strongholds, which is exactly where the Muslim Votes movement is concentrating its efforts. Well, Gaza may well be the catalyst. A well-coordinated campaign come election time could well be cataclysmic for the Labor Party.
I'm interested to think about what this is going to mean in the Labor heartland, because you are really pulling the rug out from underneath the Labor Party.
We're not doing it. They're doing it to themselves. It just happens that our community resides in mostly Labor-held seats.
In Victoria, there's Bob Hawke's old seat of Wills. In New South Wales, there's Paul Keating's old seat of Blaxland, and the neighbouring seat of Watson, currently held by Home Affairs and Immigration Minister Tony Burke.
How are you? Good, Minister.
Welcome to Punchbowl.
The targets are widespread. 29 of the 32 seats being contested are held by Labor.
People are angry here, aren't they?
You start with the point that there is a genuine sentiment in the community where people are furious as to what they're seeing. Most people will know somebody who is very directly impacted in some way.
The anger and outrage that you're now facing is manifesting in the form of a political movement, perhaps a political party. How seriously are you taking that threat?
I guess it'll be a different sort of campaign this time, but I never take it for granted.
Guys ready?
And for good reason. Come next election, Tony Burke will be up against a new, supposedly independent challenger, Dr. Ziad Bazouni.
Please, you need to listen to us. If you don't, we will come after you.
Who is we?
Independence.
Are you not concerned that there's a conception here of you that you are the representative of the Muslim Voice political movement?
Again, I'm the representative of every voice in Watson, whether that's a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, a Hindu, a Bengali, a Vietnamese, a Buddhist. That doesn't bother me. I will represent everyone.
So these are verses of the Quran.
For Muslim Votes Matter, it's a different story.
The Labor government has taken the Muslim population for granted electorally, politically. You know, we did a survey earlier this year, and 70% of our respondents had said they'd always voted Labor. Of those 70% though, 95% said they will not vote Labor next time.
The rise of the Muslim political movement is undeniable, with two key groups leading the charge for action on Palestine. In Melbourne, there's Muslim Votes Matter, while in Sydney, there's another group. It's called the Muslim Vote. They claim to be the largest Muslim political campaign ever set up in the history of the Australian Muslim community. And like Muslim Votes Matter, they also claim they're not a political party.
So are you going to run candidates or indicate who people should support?
So we're not a political party, so we won't run candidates, and we will make recommendations to the community who we think the community should vote for. And they could be of any party.
Are you injecting religion into politics?
Religion's always been part of politics. My religion is my values. Quite frankly, it's insulting that as a person of faith that I have to divorce my faith when I'm involved in politics. That doesn't make sense at all.
The influence of the Pro Palestinian Movement reaches well beyond federal members of parliament. It's now having a big impact on local councils as well. It's a Tuesday night in Bankstown. At its council chambers, a heated motion spills over into anti-Israeli chants. Bankstown's proudly pro-Palestinian council has supported a motion to investigate all Israeli contracts.
I declare the motion carried.
Anyone who opposes is heckled.
Terrorist supporter.
Mr. Mayor, I was just called a terrorist supporter.
And I second that. Please take your seat.
Outside, celebrations erupt.
The motion was carried. Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Palestine will be free!
Palestine will be free!
Palestine!
I just came from Gaza. I'm very proud of what happened here in the council.
21,000 babies they've deliberately slaughtered which is disgusting. And this country, Australia, are supporting them. Shame on you.
The bosses are Zionists. Wait up for you to go, man. Just get out of here. Get the out of here.
For the last 4 weeks, we've been trying to interview an outspoken Muslim leader who insists that there is no place for Islam in Australia's democracy. We've met him face to face, and there's been more than a dozen phone and text conversations just to get us to this point. He won't go on camera, but he has agreed to a phone call that we can record.
Hello.
Abu.
Yeah, how are you?
Good. It's Jonathan from Sky. Thanks for agreeing to chat over the phone. Obviously, we plan to use some of this in our feature. You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm just letting you know, though, that I'm going to be recording the conversation.
His name is Wisam Hadad, but he's also known as Sheikh Abu Assad. There's little doubt he's a polarising figure.
The Muslims of Palestine cry out to be saved from the descendants of pigs and monkeys, but no one responds.
He's known for his hardline Islamic views and extreme interpretation of the faith. Not that he sees it that way.
By Allah, the day you will be kicked out of Palestine is coming. A day when the stones and the trees will speak and say, "Oh Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him."
If that's not hate speech, I don't know what is.
Dr. David Adler is president of the Australia Jewish Association.
It's incitement, it's threatening a race of people, the Jewish people, and this is not the value system that is compatible with a liberal democracy such as Australia.
Some of the things that I do say, people may take offence to it, but I fundamentally believe that it's the truth. Otherwise, God would have not mentioned it. As I've said in videos, as I've said in the khutbah, in the sermons, and as I've said to you, there can't be a system that's ever changing. There has to be one system that's divine, that's been sent by God, a system that's going to stand the test of time.
Here is a recent sermon with advice on voting come election time.
Every 4 years, come to us, come to you, come to the Ummah, come to the Muslim community with a new opinion, a new magic trick that whispers in the hearts of the believers to get you to take part.
I believe deep down, the Muslim leaders, even in Australia, know that what I'm saying is to be the truth. But for some reason, one way or the other, some of them may feel compelled to not speak the truth that needs to be spoken because they have their own agenda, or they may worry about pressure from the government and the authorities and things of that nature.
He too is driven by Gaza.
What's going on in Gaza at the moment, with the Muslims being killed there, and even in fact the Christians or anyone else who live in the land, it's sad for everyone to see. Like, you don't have to be a Muslim necessarily to see that what's happening there is in fact a genocide.
You say Muslims should not participate in Australia's democracy or should not get involved in a Muslim political party.
So all these verses that we bring together showing us that legislation belongs solely to God. Allah himself has said that Muslims should not be involved in any system, whether it be democracy or otherwise.
So only Allah in your faith has the right to tell people what to do?
Correct.
So my dear brothers and sisters, return to your senses. Don't be fooled by these farting wicked scholars who whisper these doubts and ideas for you to be involved in the shirk of democracy. Do not go out and vote for a legislator who will make laws. The best maslahah is to preserve your Islam.
What do you say to those who call you a radical?
I don't believe any part of my faith is radical.
Well, okay. Would a radical call somebody to commit crimes in the name of Allah?
No, crimes cannot be committed in the name of Allah. Do people do wrong? Do people sin? Yes, they do. But to do wrong or sin in the name of Allah is something that no Muslim would ever say is permissible.
The preacher's defence there is that these are just the words of religious texts.
Jonathan, if that's his view, if that's his value set, he would be better off living somewhere else. This is not appropriate for Australia.
In Australia, following the October 7 Hamas attacks, there was a dramatic increase in anti-Semitism and a marked increase in diverse, unprovoked acts and extreme violence directed towards a range of victims. There was the stabbing of a Christian bishop in Western Sydney, which police allege to be a terrorism event.
He smiled and yelled in Arabic. Why was he insulting my prophet and my religion?
In Perth, another stabbing in a Bunnings car park. At Sydney University, a 14-year-old boy, allegedly motivated by the Christchurch mosque massacre that killed 50 Muslims, attacked a university student. It was reported that he held a so-called salad bar of ideologies.
We've seen more extreme narratives play out that really hone in and target young Muslim men and women, but particularly men. We're also seeing it play out with the far right.
Josh Roos is an expert on religious and violent extremism. He says radical ideologies offer an alternate source of meaning to young people.
Emotion's a key element of their narrative messaging. They're targeting people who are looking for something bigger than themselves, who are frustrated, who feel themselves to be humiliated and ashamed, who are looking to contribute to something.
Josh Roos believes the radicalisation of young people of all faiths can be blamed on social media.
Social media enables extremist recruiters and movements to reach out, to build narratives that are really highly calibrated to targeting people at the margins, people who feel lost, who are in particular angry.
So concerned is ASIO, it's just lifted the terror threat from possible to probable.
As polarisation, frustration and perceived injustices grow, ASIO anticipates an increase in politically motivated violence, including terrorism. Across all ideological spectrums, attacks are likely to occur with little or no warning and will be difficult to detect.
But Mike Burgess does not believe Gaza has been the inspiration for any of the recent attacks.
Gaza is not the cause of this rising, but actually I acknowledge, yes, it's a significant driver. It's driven more emotion and heat into society.
It's critical that we don't pull out and just pick and choose certain elements of the community and talk about them as a mass block. But that said, we need to understand that the threat does continue to exist across the spectrum.
Do you think a Muslim party could be used for harm, for radicalised members within the community?
From what I have seen and whom I know who are behind this Muslim party idea, I don't see any radical person within them whatsoever. But what's going to happen in the future, I don't know.
Can I ask you about religious-based political parties? Is there a place in our democratic system for them, or are they a risk?
Anything or any topic can be used to drive extremist views, and that's the problem.
Mick Willing is a former Deputy Commissioner for the New South Wales Police and head of the Counter-Terrorism Task Force.
When I ran Counter-Terrorism and Special Tactics Command in New South Wales, at any one time there would be on average 30 current investigations that were ongoing.
It's extraordinary.
Yep. It's the way it's been for a long time.
Ambassador, Indonesia has the world's largest Muslim population. Why should Australia not fear Islam?
Because we are peaceful. Yeah, because we are peaceful. We are not perfect. We are not a perfect democracy. We're still learning.
Ambassador Siswo Pramono believes Australia shouldn't be fearful of a Muslim political movement.
The only way is to strengthen your multiculturalism. Democracy should not be imposed from above, but it should be homegrown. The seed can be from everywhere, yeah, but it must be planted in your own soil, and your soil is your cultures, your history, and your community.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your business. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
By far, the biggest challenge facing the fledgling Muslim vote movement in Australia is how to unite and mobilise their community.
Thank you so much, huh? Thank you for your business, huh? Yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Is there a place in Australian politics for a religious-based political party?
Absolutely not. Religion and politics should never mix. What has it got to do with what, Your political view should have nothing to do with your religious view.
Rami Yamal knows his community well. He runs the successful Rasha's restaurant chain, located in the Muslim heartland of Sydney's west.
The people who are upset about what's happening in Palestine aren't just a Muslim community. It's about how we unite, how we're going to unite, how we're going to bring people together, how we're going to make people feel more Australian. That's where the answer is.
Dr. Rifi, thank you for your time.
Jamal Rifi is a Lebanese Muslim and doctor in Belmore, Sydney. He's concerned that while the community unites around Gaza, a Muslim vote movement could create division.
They have little understanding about the ramification of what they are doing, not in southwestern Sydney, but across the nation. It's very divisive, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the majority of people that I consulted with.
Religion and politics aside, when it comes to Palestine, the Muslim community is of one voice.
It's amazing. You know, one incident that's happening in Palestine has unified the Muslim front, and you're seeing the effects of unity. So yes, we have divisions. I wouldn't call them fractures, I would call them divisions. We have sects, just like the Christian community has sects. But what unites us is way more than what divides us. And this is what the concept that we've realised, that unity brings way more power than division.
Tonight, the Australian people have voted for change.
The next federal election could be a mirror image of the last. Labor won, but for the Liberals it was a disaster. It lost a clutch of seats to the Teal Independents. Now, the challenge for the ALP is not so much the independents, but the Muslim votes movement.
We have teams in every single capital city. Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. Our volunteers are in the hundreds, probably even close to 1,000 now. This is active volunteers. So we're already running sessions in community centres. The one thing in common is people come up to us and say, just tell us who to vote for.
Would Labor enter into a coalition with a Muslim party if it meant holding on to government?
We wouldn't enter into coalition with anyone. And the Prime Minister's made that clear the whole way through.
So it's a hard and fast rule, would not back down on?
Yeah, correct.
Right next door to Tony Burke's Labor seat is the federal electorate of Fowler, a prime target for the Muslim votes group.
Look at that nice temple. There's another temple down there. That's what Australia is about today. It's very multicultural, it's very multi-faith.
For 38 years, Fowler was a jewel in Labor's working class crown, until that is, Daly drove into town. 2 years ago, she ran as an independent and made history.
There's a phenomenon taking place, isn't there, with people moving away from the major parties?
Well, that's what I am reading and that's what I'm hearing, and I suppose at the May 2022 election, I believe it was the biggest crossbench, independents crossbench that were elected.
Why is that? Is there a sense that the major parties are out of touch with modern multicultural Australia?
Look, I think it's not just multicultural Australia. I think they're out of touch with people, full stop.
Daly believes come election day, local issues will trump foreign affairs.
And I say this to some of the people who are thinking about running as an independent. I said, how connected are you to your community? What issues are important to them? Don't go out and campaign on big global issues, because that's not what the community will be talking about.
Here in inner city Melbourne, the Greens are undergoing their own transformation as they move from being a party of protest to one with the aspiration of shaping foreign policy. They're targeting a swathe of Labor seats that, if successful, will give them a power once unimaginable.
Genocide and war crimes happen when the perpetrators think there are going to be no consequences.
The Greens are going hard on Gaza, viewing this issue as an opportunity to gain more seats from Labor at the next election. It's not lost on the federal opposition.
Labor MPs, from junior backbenchers to senior cabinet ministers, are living in fear that they will lose their seats over the issue of Gaza. They're fearful that they might lose it to the Greens, or if not the Greens, to a Muslim-backed independent candidate who runs primarily on Gaza issues.
If the government was true to their word and cared about the Palestinian people, well, they would take actions against Israel to stop the genocide and the invasion.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, Labor has backed the invasion that has seen a health system destroyed, that has seen a human-engineered famine.
This, to me, epitomises exactly what the Greens are about.
Anne Ali is Labor's Minister for Youth and Early Childhood. She's also an expert in counter-terrorism and violent extremism, and a proud Muslim.
It is an absolute disgrace that they would use this situation to take advantage of the pain and the hurt that is being felt across the nation among Muslim and Arab communities and try and use it for political advantage. That is all I have to say about the Greens.
There are those we've spoken to within Labor who think the Greens are acting like a pack of punks who are trying to use Palestine to divide their vote.
The Greens are taking a principled position.
Labor is attempting to do anything to distract from their complicity in the unfolding genocide.
Labor and the Liberals, instead of listening to what the Australian people want and pushing hard to say, no, this unlawful invasion or this terrible invasion must end, these war crimes must end, instead of pushing for that, Labor and the Liberals have instead continued to say, well, we're going to continue to back the invasion and take no concrete steps to stop it. That is out of step. That is out of step with what people want.
And what do you all do? What does this Labor government do? They can recognise Israel, but they can't immediately recognise Palestine.
They've sought to weaponise a foreign conflict for domestic political advantage irresponsibly. They've whipped up a lot of anger in the community and directed it towards the electorate offices of Labor MPs in a way that's deeply dangerous and unprincipled.
The challenge for the ALP is not just from the Greens, independents and Muslim Votes movement, it's also from within. Senator, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Fatima Payman is the newly independent senator for Western Australia. Wow, huh? It's been a wild ride.
A roller coaster ride indeed.
What do you make of what's just happened?
It's been tough, intense, but I've got no regrets.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
It's a provocative and inflammatory phrase that means so much to so many. For the Labor Party, it's when tensions with the Muslim senator became front page news.
The Labor Party as the party that would champion human rights, a party that would stay firm and have that strength of conviction.
It came at a time when the Albanese government was already under severe pressure over Gaza.
And that realisation really broke me. I felt every move, every interaction, every event I went to, every speech I delivered was controlled, was reviewed.
Payman's unwavering stance on Gaza led to her being summoned to the Prime Minister's office.
There were truths that I had to state, but there's also nothing more liberating than speaking your truth and standing for your beliefs and holding on to the strength of your conviction. I literally ended it with, Prime Minister, we can agree to disagree. That's fine. That doesn't make any one of us good or bad. We just don't see eye to eye on things, and that's fine.
And his response?
Well, we'll keep that confidential.
It was an audacious step for the young senator, crossing the floor to align with the Greens in defiance of her own party's sworn solidarity.
Thinking about it sometimes just makes my blood boil. I feel like the same Labor Party that I campaigned so hard for wasn't the same Labor Party that I found myself fighting against.
And she says it's the voters who feel they've been betrayed by Anthony Albanese and the Labor government.
I've been hearing from people on the ground that they do feel betrayed, that it wasn't me who crossed the floor, it was the rest of my caucus members in the Senate who crossed the floor to the wrong side. I did what I thought was right, and I followed my conviction, and now I have the liberty of living with a free conscience, you know, free from the guilt, free from feeling like I'm being controlled or gagged.
For speaking her voice, the young senator paid the price.
The question should be, why is Senator Payman, who is advocating on behalf of a community concern, being punished for advocating for community concerns? Isn't that the whole concept of democracy?
Regardless of where you're from, what you believe in, there is no place in our society for hatred, for division, for violence. There is no reason why we can't have a conversation, and even if we must agree to disagree, it makes us wholesome as a nation, it makes us productive as a nation, and we must always remember that as Australians, we have an Indigenous foundation, a British democracy, and a multicultural unity that binds us all together.